Item 2 on your agenda, and I'll ask the officer to introduce the item. Thank you.
Thank you. First of all, I'd just like to highlight a correction to the report and some further very recent representations that have been made. In the consultation section of the report, it indicates that there was no response from East Acton councillors. In fact, Councillor Crawford had submitted a formal objection, but that was summarised within the response of the several hundred residents rather than being highlighted separately. We have expanded on these points within the briefing note. In addition, we've had some very recent representations against the application by Rupa Huq, the Ealing MP, and also by Dr. Sahota, the London Assembly member for Ealing. So, having done that, this proposal involves redevelopment of the vacant Goldsmiths Arms pub, which is locally listed within the Acton Park Conservation Area and also designated as an asset of community value. The proposed new building will provide 65 flats on the upper floors with 524 square metres of flexible commercial floor space at ground and park basement levels. This commercial space could be used for a replacement pub or a mixture of other uses such as shops, cafes, a gym, a community centre or a nursery. All of the proposed 65 flats would be affordable, with a 10-year split of 20% London affordable rent and 80% London living rent. The Council's housing section support this scheme as genuinely affordable and would make an important contribution to meeting local housing demand. Now, it is recognised that this scheme has been subject to a high level of objection from local residents, particularly with regard to the loss of the pub. However, we believe the loss of the pub building can be justified by the submitted marketing evidence, which indicates there is not a realistic prospect for this building being reopened as a pub in its current form at a time when many pubs are closing, and when the option of the pub being acquired and operated by the community no longer appears feasible. The current scheme provides an opportunity for a replacement pub operation if an operator can be found for it. Also, there are a number of other pubs, some with gardens and function rooms, within a reasonable walking distance, which may mitigate the loss to some extent. In terms of design, the proposed building at 3 to 6 stories would be higher than many nearby buildings. However, it's considered that a higher building is appropriate at this prominent junction beside an open space. This height would provide the prominence required on the important corner junction, help create a sense of place and provide a landmark on this corner. As the building turns into Friars Place Lane, the height would reduce to 3 stories with a setback 1-storey gable roof to reflect the lower scale of the adjoining houses there. This design has evolved through considerable negotiation with the developer and public consultation with residents, with a number of changes being made to reflect this, including reducing the height, setting back the roof gables and changing materials, and it is considered acceptable for this location. Overall, the replacement building is considered to be of good quality in terms of scale, design and materials, and one which should contribute positively to the area. We've also given careful consideration to the pub building being locally listed and within a conservation area. There may be some limited harm from its loss, but any harm to the conservation area needs to be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including the site's optimum viable use. On balance, we consider the proposed development, along with the benefits associated with it, would outweigh the loss of the pub building and enhance the conservation area. These public benefits would include bringing a vacant site within the conservation area back into viable use, providing the opportunity for a replacement community pub on the site, given that the existing building appears unlikely to attract a new pub operator, provision of 65 genuinely affordable housing units, and provision of a good quality building that's considered to enhance the conservation area. The proposed flats will provide adequate environmental and living conditions in terms of floor space, layout, visual outlook, amenity space, and children's play space. It would not have any unacceptable impacts on the amenity of adjoining dwellings due to its reduced height and setback on some elevations and the separation distances involved. In terms of transport, the site has a low public transport accessibility and only 4 disabled car parking spaces are being proposed. However, various measures are agreed to mitigate any traffic impacts or overspill parking in the surrounding area, and these are denying parking permits to scheme residents and the applicant providing a car club scheme. Section 106 contributions for a review of the controlled parking zone, for cycle infrastructure and works to the public highway for the site's East Acton Lane frontage. And under a Section 278 agreement, the developer would improve the junction of Flowers Place Lane and East Acton Lane, renew footways along site frontages, and provide an additional pedestrian crossing to the primary school. The scheme also includes a range of renewable energy and energy efficiency measures and is acceptable in sustainability terms. So overall, this proposal will provide a number of planning benefits, including providing a significant amount of genuinely affordable housing units, bringing a vacant site back into viable use, and up to approximately £355,000 in Section 106 contributions towards local infrastructure. The impact in heritage terms is considered acceptable. So while the loss of the pub is regrettable, on balance, we believe that the scheme can be supported, particularly as it offers the opportunity to bring a pub use back to the site. Thank you.
Thank you. We have an objector. Is it Dorian Crone? So if you would. So you would have 3 minutes, sir, if you sit down, and then when you're ready, just switch on the mic and you can speak.
Are we ready? Good evening. I'm Dorian Crone, Heritage and Design Consultant, acting on behalf of the residents for this Goldsmiths Public House case. The public house we've just heard is a heritage asset. It's been registered as such and recognised as such by the local community through its locally listing. It's also protected within a conservation area. So it's doubly protected. And in fact, the conservation area, as you've probably seen from the documentation, forms a bubble specifically around the pub to protect it. I'll go on to the new design, if I may, first, and then I'll go back to the heritage issue. The new design, I suggest, is much more reflective of an urban character, not a suburban character, which is the character of the conservation area. 2 stories, 1920s, semi-detached houses. I would suggest that this is much more in keeping with a dockland or a warehouse conservation area rather than a domestic semi-detached suburban area. I'd suggest it is out of keeping in scale, bulk and mass. The houses round and about are 2-storied with pitch roofs, not 4 to 6-storied as the proposal it is. We now go on to the setting of the conservation area. I believe because the pub is a good example of one of your pubs in your community, one of only 18. If you go to a neighbouring borough, there might be, in the case of Hammersmith and Fulham, something like 50 plus recognised pubs. You've only got 18 here, so it's really rather a precious heritage asset. My concern is that if this one goes, protected as a locally listed building and within a conservation area, even though case by case, each case is treated on its merits, this sets a really worrying precedent for similar building types which are protected, maybe merely in a conservation area as a heritage asset, maybe merely as a locally listed building, but the fact that this is both will mean potentially other developments like this will be able to get through with much greater ease. And it's for you, ladies and gentlemen, to decide whether the public benefit outweighs the quality and value of this really rather fine locally listed public house in your community. Finally, to sum up, the pub and the church, with the two little cottages next door, reflect a character of the village. Once this pub, the heart of that, goes, it will no longer have that reflection of the village, the historic village with its church and its pub and its little cottages. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have the applicant, is it Tim Preston? Same thing, so you have 3 minutes once you want to start.
Hello, thank you for giving me the opportunity to say a few words about Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing Association and our commitment to delivering this genuinely affordable housing scheme. This development represents an important and exciting opportunity for my organisation for several reasons. Firstly and simply, it is our reason to be. We are a social landlord that has made contractually binding commitments to government via Homes England and the GLA. The strategic and moral commitments and promises to our stakeholders, partners, funders and customers that we will deliver as much new affordable housing as we can. The scheme we are presenting will deliver 65 new homes, all of which meets your definition of genuinely affordable. This means 65 households who cannot operate effectively in the private sector will benefit from heavily subsidised rents, facilitating sustainable housing future and, more importantly, the ability to lay down foundations. The rental products include London Affordable Rent, which allow households access to good quality homes at rents between 50 and 60% of market levels. London Living Rent, a new GLA product which offers those trapped in the private sector an opportunity to save between £250 and £750 per calendar month towards a deposit, making it possible to access home ownership in the future. The scheme excites us because, being genuinely affordable, it is not a commercial development opportunity aimed at generating profit to subsidise affordable housing elsewhere. This is an end in itself. Crucially, this scheme represents an opportunity for the borough because 100% of the initial nomination rights to all 65 homes will benefit London Borough of Ealing and local people. The site has been marketed since the brewery closed the pub in September 2017. But due to no credible parties coming forward, despite offering flexibility on lease terms, it is our view, and CNW's, the marketing agent, that the pub in its current state is not viable. You will have read in your committee reports that we undertook a robust public consultation process which included engaging with local community groups throughout the planning process. We hosted a 2-day public exhibition, and then we canvassed the opinions of local people from over 700 addresses across 44 local streets. The results of this extensive engagement allowed us to better understand how the future commercial space could best serve the local area. As a result, our application is for a flexible use class that could see a pub reopen on site, provide a community centre, a local shop, a nursery or a combination. If everything goes to plan, we are targeting a start on site by the end of this calendar year, with this scheme being completed by the end of 2021. In summary, we believe this is a strong offer for the council, and it sees a vacant site come back into use, delivering 65 homes that equates to more than 2% of the council's 2,500 genuinely affordable housing target. Furthermore, the development proposes to bring back a facility to serve as a hub for the community, which will help local people and improve social cohesion. I hope, therefore, that you are minded to approve our application this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councillor Taylor? The ward councillor, you wanted to speak? You have 5 minutes.
Okay, thanks Chair, thanks Committee. It's 5 minutes on how a housing person is going to object to a housing development application, but here you go, let's try. I sent some comments on earlier today. I'm going to largely expand on those here, but I do need to say up front, really my disappointment is on the quality of the report that's been presented verbally tonight, but also actually in the report. I think if you look at your executive summary, the fourth paragraph of that executive summary sums up that disappointment for many people. We've just heard from Dorian earlier tonight. Tonight's why the residents have sought their own planning professional advice, and I'm disappointed that perhaps the report that's been set out didn't really make that available at an earlier stage online for members to view. Now, I've got a petition here, 4,000 residents, makes it one of the biggest in Ealing history. Tim Preston's just talked about the consultation, and page 34 of the report talks about that and how the extent to which they've leafleted. What it doesn't tell you is actually how few people actually positively engage with that process and what that response has been. It also doesn't tell you about the meetings that ourselves, Councillor Crawford and Rupert Hutt were involved in and what the outcome was, and that officer's report should have stated that. I also need to state this objection includes all the Free Ward councillors, the local GLA member, Dr. Onkus Sahoja, as well as Rupert Hutt MP, whose letters of objection you've both received today. The officer has corrected himself in confirming there has been a response, obviously, from Councillor Crawford, an objection on our behalf. And I should say this has been an inclusive campaign of the whole community in preserving this, not just certain factions or certain parts or certain demographics. One united campaign in East Acton. Now, on the principal development, we should be making clear this is a windfall site. It's an extra site. It was never intended to be included as a housing site. The owners who bought the site was with a clear intention to turn it into housing, and obviously then subsequently shut down. And really the efforts to market it have been pretty lame as a proper commercial operation. It did outbid pub operators such as Fuller's to purchase this site. So clearly major operators had an interest in buying this site. And this is important to understand the context of the campaign to preserve this. And it's important because this is now an area, nearly 4,000 homes, with absolutely nothing apart from one small shop, which is up the road on Friars Place Lane. That was the one concern, and that's all we've now got left. You've seen the letter from Jacqueline Davis, the chair of the Residents Association, and what the pub at the heart of that community meant. The councillors, local police, resident groups have all used that space available to hold community events. It's been used as an anchor for great get-together like this Friday, as it would have been this Friday, and street party celebration. It was used as a pre- and post-drinks for QPR supporters. That closure has seen an increase in loneliness and social isolation and in health deterioration amongst our elderly population in the area, of which some are close by in the Peabody estate. The Goldsmiths Arms was a successful pub, and it still can be. There remains a genuine live interest to restore that pub to full use if that freehold was offered, including from the station house manager, which is a few 500 yards down the road at Acton Central, as well as from Fuller's. That interest remains. However, offering stringent lease conditions, not flexible as is suggested, was never going to be a realistic option for reputable pub operators. And the report in the section around the marketing makes no attempt to challenge the developers' marketing information and conditions of that lease. I can also refute the suggestion that the pub is falling apart. We have evidence that fixtures and fittings are still as they are as the day it was closed. Obviously on your site visit you saw the overgrowth and the rubbish that was left by the travellers over a month ago. Now there's been innuendos and reports about the licensing hours extension which was resisted, and that's based on some supposition, and it would have been better if actually obviously the last ward councillors who might have provided that context to that. Commercial conditions and history at the height of the recession in 2010, when austerity kicked in, is really an insult to local community and what this pub means. Let me address the ACV issue, the Asset Community Values, because the report again presents confusion over this. The Goldsmiths Arms W3 Limited applied for and obtained an ACV for this site. There is no legal deadline on an ACV bid in the Localism Act, and rather an extended moratorium period following expression of interest by the company that's set up. So the owner generally could not sell to anyone else pending the expiration of that period. So why was that not explored? Policy HC7 of the Emerging London Plan, which has been supported by Ealing Council, states that boroughs should protect public houses where they have a heritage, economic, social, cultural value to local communities. And that may be an emergent plan, but it has weight in terms of your decision making here tonight. And the Goldsmiths Arms clearly squarely makes that criteria. But can there still be a pub? Well, the likelihood it will be like a little pump that might be offered on the way home. You might get a little pump, a space if you want. Just quickly, I didn't realise that's 5 minutes, Chair. Was it? Okay. Well, let's just say, I hope you do reject this application. You sure that's not 3 minutes? Okay. All right. Well, I do hope you reject this application and preserve, restore that pub. Thank you.
Okay. Do you want to? Do you want to pick up any points? Sorry.
I'd just say on the, just to clarify, on the moratorium period, that as Councillor Taylor mentioned, a bid, an intention to bid was submitted by the Goldsmiths Residents Association, which triggered the full 6-month moratorium period during which the owner of the land would not have been able to sell. That 6-month period expired on the 19th of May. Whilst there's nothing in the legislation that says you cannot put in another bid after that date, in fact the moratorium period is over and the owner is entitled to dispose of the land as they see fit without any restrictions, and they've got 18 months from the original date that, or from their intention to sell to do that. I hope that clarifies.
Question. Councillor Taylor mentioned the submission of a petition. I just want to clarify whether a petition has actually been served tonight. Okay. I think it would be useful to understand that, and also what the petition is saying and what it's in relation to, i.e. is it in relation to the planning application proposals, or is it in relation to the asset of community use? Can we just understand that? So I just wanted to clarify that, because I know there's been lots of suggestion in lots of correspondence over the last few days that a petition exists, but obviously we've been checking and we want to understand if it's actually been received. So until tonight's presentation, just want to check that. Can you just take one moment to just take a quick look at this? Thank you. I just wanted to confirm that it is in relation to the planning application. It's in relation to saving the Goldsmiths Arms, and it includes 1,443 signatures in the document and a further 2,442 online. We will obviously note that as part of the considerations. I don't think there's anything more I can add about the actual contents of the objection, so we'll take that away. And then I think just wanted to, I think a number of the points obviously have been addressed in the officer's introduction to you, but I just wanted to come back on comments in relation to the formatting of the officer's report. The officer's report will present a summary of the planning issues. Obviously, as part of the application assessment, there are a number of documents which sit behind the assessment, including the applicant's own submissions. We have obviously scrutinised the report, and we do consider it to be a true and fair representation of the planning issues. Obviously, the main issues in terms of the principle, they're set out, including the details of the marketing and the assessment. We can talk about that further, but we have summarised that, and I can assure you that we do scrutinise the documentation as part of that assessment. And in terms of the heritage assessment, fully recognising the site's designation, its location within the conservation area, and its locally listed status, that does form part of the consideration. We're very aware of the residents' own appointed heritage consultants and their reports. We have considered those. We have formed a different conclusion, and those are set out in the officer's report. It is a balance that you need to make in terms of considering the issues and the considerations. We don't think that the change and the scale in particular does have a harmful impact on the conservation area. It is undoubtedly a difference from the existing building on site, and it is different from some of the buildings in the locality. We have taken that into consideration. We've also looked at its context in relation to the corner setting and obviously the village green. And in making that assessment, we have formed a view that this scale of development is appropriate for this site. So those are the main points that I wanted to come back on. My colleagues already addressed the point in relation to the asset of community value. Thank you.
So I'm asking for questions. Councillor Wall, you indicated.
Hello, is this working? Right, so, okay, picking up on Hitesh's point, on that fourth paragraph, this the paragraph I've got marked all over the place because it doesn't read right to me. It's lacking a bit of facts really in my. So two questions on that really, is that it says the pub being acquired and operated by the community. Sorry, let me read this. And the option of the pub being acquired and operated by the community no longer appears feasible. Just want to know what feasible means in terms of this report. And secondly, the presence of a number of other pubs nearby, and then they're not listed in this part, they may be further in, but could you just say what ones have got function rooms and gardens, etc., that are close by? And sorry, third question is in terms of length of marketability, going into this has only been marketed for 20 months, I believe, is that right? And then the emerging plan, it should be 24 months. Why are we allowing it to come before the 24 months?
I can come back on.
Because there's some more people indicated questions, so I don't know whether we just get more, or do you want to answer those first? Okay, we'll do those first.
First of all, on the paragraph 4, where it was suggesting... Sorry, on paragraph 4, where it indicates it's no longer feasible for the community to acquire and to operate the pub, that only reflects the situation with the asset of community value and the fact that the 6-month period for the community to purchase the pub has now expired. So given that, it's not a feasible option for the community to operate the pub because they can't buy it. I think that is explained further in the report. In terms of other pubs nearby, they're on page 37 of the report. So there's 4 other pubs within 1 kilometre of the site. And 3 probably within walking distance of 500, 600 metres, which is the Wishing Well, the Station House, the Rocket and the Windmill. 3 of these have a beer garden and 2 of them have a function room. Well, this is on page 37 of the report. The Wishing Well is 550 metres away. The Station House 590 metres away. The Rocket 642 metres away. And the Windmill 900 metres away.
No gardens in any of them.
All of you.
Hello. Yeah, I'm sorry. Just to spell out, and I can hear the residents saying about which ones have got gardens and which ones have got functions, and I think it's comparable gardens rather than just frontage to the street, etc. I think that's what the angst is about, really.
we had Councillor Razor. You
We're on. Yeah. It was actually to pick up on a similar thing to Councillor Wall. I noticed on our site visit that there was a children's playground out in the quite extensive beer garden that they have at the Goldsmiths Arms. And that's quite a lot of sort of parkland almost, and sort of leisure space for people in the local area. Once that's gone, I don't know what the nearest sort of spot would be for people to, so where would the alternate arrangement for that sort of space be? And also, I mean, we can see that everybody would ideally love to have the affordable housing aspect of it, but once a venue like this is gone, the community hub situation isn't really replaceable in 2 little units at the bottom, which might, and it's an either-or thing where maybe it could be a pub, maybe it could be something else about it. As a venue, I don't think that would work. Could you really have a wedding at the bottom of that? No, you couldn't, really. Another thing that grates is the P-TAL rating. With so many units, it's got a very low P-TAL rating, and I can't imagine that everybody would be walking, just walking. So that grates as well. So on a kind of weighing the things up, I would say that there's quite a lot of things that have big question mark for me, so I'm a bit concerned about them.
Councillor Summers?
Yeah, I'm hugely conflicted by this application because, you know, I feel passionately about affordable housing, but also about the closure of pubs. I mean, we had one in my ward, the Plough, which burnt down and was, you know, Fuller's, who owned it, never rebuilt it because of the viability of pubs or whatever. And we've now got flats above a shop. So I'm sort of acutely aware of how things change. I mean, and in that case, you've got 2 pubs relatively closely. I mean, so I don't know which way I'm going to go. Councillor Taylor's speech was very sort of passionate and sort of made me think again, actually. But my main question is about the actual viability of, you know, of it as a pub. On page 102, it says the marketing report indicates that no credible offers were received. I mean, what does that mean? Does that mean no offers, or they just haven't met the asking price, or the price that they want to make a profit? Whatever. I mean, how does it work?
I'll take one more, and then we'll come back to you. Councillor Rice.
There you go. Sorry, thank you, Chair. I went on the site visit as well, and like Councillor Raz, I just note that there was a play area behind there. And I was just really thinking about just how important it is for children in the area. And I also live in a development quite similar to this, a large 4-storey development in a suburban area, which was built on top of where an old pub was. So I will say that. One thing I do regret, I mean, it's a wonderful place where I live, but I do regret the fact that we don't have many play facilities for children, because that is very important. So I'm just actually wondering, I mean, there's talk about maybe having a pub actually built into the building on the ground floor, as it were. And so I just wonder, is it possible to maybe think about having maybe a soft play area with a cafe, and have maybe a playground at somewhere on the development? And also, one thing I'll also say as well is I do actually welcome the fact that there's space for retail, because it has been pointed out that there's a lack of shops in the area, so that's something to be welcomed as well. Thank you.
Okay, one person more. Councillor Young, is it a question, yeah? Okay.
It's on now, right? Sorry, it was flashing at me earlier. Can I just ask the relevance of London Plan Policy 316, which is mentioned on page 35, which talks about we should resist any proposals which result in a loss of social infrastructure. And it says that we should resist that if there is no realistic proposal for reprovision. Can I ask, is the commercial use on this site restricted to a public house, or could it be anything? I know the answer.
Okay, do you want to try and...
just answer these questions in the reverse order. In terms of the uses that could be allowed in the pub, it's a range of uses, which I think, as I mentioned, could be a pub, could be a gym, shops, restaurants, cafes, community centre, nursery. So it's flexible, it could be any of these uses. On policy 316, I mean, the way I interpret this policy is that the loss of pubs' social infrastructure will be protected unless there are realistic proposals for re-provision. Well, I suppose in my view, the proposal doesn't make a realistic proposal for re-provision because it allows for a replacement pub, which would seem to meet the wording of the policy. Going back on some of the other points, I mean, I understand the point about the loss of the pub garden, which a new pub isn't going to replace that exactly. I think that's fairly obvious. But if the pub doesn't reopen and is not viable and doesn't attract a pub operator, that use is going to be lost anyway. So I think we've got to take that into account in making our decision. On the low PTAL rating, well, I think that's right. However, our Transport Services section have considered the proposals, and they're quite happy with it, subject to all the Section 106 contributions and the provision of a car club to allow car use by scheme residents. On the point about no credible offers, well, the market report doesn't go into great detail about what constitutes a credible offer. I suppose my understanding would be it would be from a company or individual who has sufficient financial backing to make the offer and can demonstrate that, or it could be that the offer was insufficient in terms of the value of the site. It could be a number of reasons. I don't think we've been told exactly what these reasons are, other than it wasn't a credible offer. I think these are the main points. The last point about the soft play area with the cafe, well, that's not part of the scheme at the moment. I can see it's quite desirable, but that would depend on which of the potential uses of the commercial space took up these units. If there was a cafe, that might be possible. If not, there's not going to be that's not going to be possible, basically.
All right, I have two more people who've indicated, then I'll come back to you, Ray. Sorry. Your question?
One was about the 24 months, and one was about equivalent sort of gardens. It does say gardens, but a garden could be 3 square feet, green. I'm exaggerating, of course, but sort of equivalent. I mean, I don't think any of those pubs have an equivalent garden to size. Probably put all their gardens together, it probably wouldn't be big enough. The same size.
Okay, well, I think that's possibly right. I mean, we put gardens where there's some sort of outdoor drinking area, so to do the pub. We haven't looked into the size of that, and I'm not sure there is any equivalent pub garden nearby. On the 24 months, well, I'm looking at the report. They first started marketing this site in 2017, which was, I think it was 20 months at the time this report was written. Of course, a couple of months have gone on since then. I mean, it may not be quite 24 months, but it's pretty close to it. The 24 months comes from the draft London Plan policy, but of course that's not an adopted policy yet, and still to get through the public inquiry, I believe. So we thought 20 months or more is quite a reasonable period to be marketing it, given that there's no specific period set down in any of the adopted policies.
Okay, I have Councillor Martin and then Councillor Cox and then Councillor Woodruff, and then I think we'll try and draw the question to an end.
Thanks. Is that working? Yeah. Okay, so I'd also like to go back to the marketing reports because to my mind, it's quite critical in terms of the base on which you're making a decision tonight. So it doesn't seem much point in holding out for the pub if there isn't a viable option of anyone running the pub. So this paragraph seems to put the nail in the coffin of that idea. But I'm sort of hearing from the audience that there may be a difference of opinion about that. And I just wonder to what extent have we relied on a marketing report that has been produced
For commercial gain?
for commercial reasons, and how confident are we that that information is accurate?
I'd say it is.
One more, or a couple more, and then we'll close. So, Councillor Cox.
Just to echo what Councillor Martin's just said as well about the marketing, I'm not entirely convinced that everything's been done that should have been done. It's more of a comment about our communities, really. I came into politics because of housing. I saw the desperate need residents had for housing. But bricks and mortar don't just make a house. Communities make houses. And part of any thriving community is its pub. It's a place where all different types of people come together, spaces for all different kinds of events. Now, I'd love to see those 65 families, obtain 65 properties that were truly affordable, but at what cost? So I am slightly cautious, and I take a lot from what Councillor Taylor said. This was a successful venue, and there's clearly a desire from residents here to make it a successful venue again. And I think we should support them in doing that. Thank you.
Councillor Woodruff, question please, rather than...
Yes, thank you. Okay, yes, a couple of questions. I mean, I'm in a situation where my heart v my head, I think, is a real problem. The idea of I think the London plan, I think, is looking towards pubs, and it may not be in operation, but sometimes we have sort of said, oh, we should do it in anticipation of something that's going to happen. So I don't know where our position is on that. But I have a specific question on the hours of the opening hours on 26. The hours go up to 23 hours. It's part of the planning conditions. Now, I think one thing, I think 23 hours for pubs is actually quite early these days. If a pub, and pubs certainly of some things like New Year's Eve, would want to open for another hour or so, is that impossible to do under this, or is it actually 23 hours in stone?
Sorry. Do you want to just deal with those couple of...
Right. On the point about the marketing reports, I think with any planning application, a large number of supporting documents are submitted. I mean, things like transport assessments, flood risk assessments, environmental reports, and marketing reports. And these are all done by professional companies who are putting their reputation on the line and vouch for the accuracy of the reports. So with this application, there's a large number of supporting reports, all of which we're not questioning. We're taking them at face value unless there's any evidence to contradict them. And I think it's the same with the marketing report. It's produced by a professional organisation, and we're accepting their findings unless there's any evidence to contradict them. And there has been no evidence submitted of anyone to contradict these marketing reports, I'm afraid. At least we haven't received it. So in the absence of that, I think we have to take what the marketing report says. I think there was also a point about whether the pub could be successful and viable. I know various statements have been made to that effect, but again, we've got no concrete evidence that a viable pub could be provided on the site. This hasn't come through as part of the planning application. On the point about opening hours, well, we put the condition up to 2,300 hours. That's been accepted with the applicant. That obviously, if an operator was unhappy, that they could apply to vary that condition, and which is also controlled by licensing controls anyway.
Okay. Alex, do you want to add anything? No. All right. So now we move to the debate. If anybody wants to sort of indicate their views, we've done the questions. If not, then we can. Okay, Councillor Young.
Yes, I just wanted to say that I think that the loss of this asset would tear the heart out of the community. And I think that we should reject the application on the grounds of London Plan Policy 316, because although there is the opportunity, it's not a realistic opportunity to replace the pub with another social outlet. Thank you.
Councillor Conlon.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly torn on this one because I do understand the attractions of the affordable housing, and I very much want to provide more genuinely affordable housing, and that is the one good thing about this. But I am very reluctant to vote to demolish the existing pub. You know, Councillor Young just mentioned the policy in the existing London plan, which seeks to protect community assets. The emerging London plan is even stronger. You know, it recognises that large numbers of pubs have been lost in London in recent years. I mean, partly this is because, you know, the pubs market has changed. It's more challenging to run a successful pub. But it's also, in many cases, it's simply more profitable to find alternative uses for sites where there are perfectly viable pubs. And so, you know, the emerging policy puts the onus on the applicant to demonstrate that pub use is no longer viable. In fact, it says applications that propose the loss of public houses with heritage, cultural, economic or social value should be refused, unless there is authoritative, my emphasis, marketing evidence that there is no realistic prospect of the building being used as a pub in the foreseeable future. Now, okay, we have got some marketing evidence, but, you know, I'm a bit sceptical of an exercise that has been conducted when there's a financial incentive to find that it isn't viable. You know, and when obviously any consultants employed by the applicant will be employed by them to support the case that they're making. And so, you know, obviously those reports are not independent. Whether they are authoritative is a matter of judgment, I guess. But, you know, policy HC7 in the draft London plan, I mean, also lays down some of the conditions that would demonstrate non-viability. One of them is that it should be marketed for at least, again my emphasis, 24 months as a pub at an agreed price following an independent valuation, and is in a condition that allows the property to continue functioning as a pub. Well, I'm pretty sure well, it's definitely true that that condition hasn't been met because it's only been marketed for 20 months. And, you know, at least, as I understand it, means that it can be more than 24 months, maybe considerably more than 24 months, but not any less. So it certainly hasn't met that part of the policy. And whether it's been at an agreed price following an independent valuation in a condition that allows the property to continue functioning as a pub, I'm not really sure it's met that condition at all. Now, I think these are quite high tests of non-viability, but they're deliberately high tests because once a pub is lost, then basically it's lost. You know. Okay. admittedly, there could be a small pub on the new site, but it's only a could. There's nothing. There's no guarantees. And I think the viability of a pub that's actually in the bottom of a block of residential flats, there's all sorts of limitations on that. I mean, for a start, the sort of noise. I mean, residents aren't going to want lots of live music or anything very, very noisy in a pub that's actually at the bottom of a block of flats. So there's all sorts of constraints that would make it difficult for a viable pub to operate on the new premises. So on balance, really, much though I love the idea of the affordable housing, you know, I think we can provide the affordable housing in other places, but we can't provide this pub everywhere else. You know, there are other pubs similar to the Goldsmiths Arms elsewhere in Ealing that are viable, that do function okay. I mean, admittedly, it might be challenging, but the thing to do is to, you know, provide decent range of beer, or you know, provide good food, or you know, provide entertainment, or maybe provide all of those sort of three things, so that the pub becomes a bit of a destination. And if you have an enterprising operator, you know, I think an enterprising operator could make a perfectly good go of this pub. And I'd need further evidence to demonstrate to me that that's not possible.
Councillor Ray Wall.
Hello, sorry, I'm leaning across now. So this really hinges on I don't think anyone really wants to shut any pubs in Ealing at all, if we could possibly get away from it. This pub is shut, and it has been shut for 18 months or something like that. So it's not as if we're closing it tomorrow, it's shut already. So I'm just trying to spell out some facts here. And Councillor Conlon's sceptical of the developer. The developer in this case is a social landlord who is offering 100% affordable housing here. We don't get these schemes very often. Bear with me. So there's that on that side. And I don't see why we're having this tonight when we haven't actually gone through the tests and we haven't had the 24 months at least 24 months of this. So where I'm going to with this is I think we should defer this one tonight, because if we don't actually get to 24 months and we're sceptical of some of the reports, etc., I think we should have some firmer reports, have that 24-month period, and then come back, rather than losing this as a scheme. I'd rather we went through all the hoops that we should go through on the emerging plan, because the emerging plan, we've given weight to that plenty of times in this room. So it is something we use in our deliberations. We've actually given permissions on the emerging plan, not necessarily the old plan. So I'm proposing to defer this one tonight until at least they've gone through the 24 months cycle and they can prove some of the factors that Councillor Conlon mentioned in terms of viability. So that's where I am.
Oh, sorry. Do we have a seconder for that deferral? Okay. So that means we would move straight to a vote. Well, we've had a...
Look, if we're going to defer it, I'd like to be a little bit clearer about how long we're going to defer it for, because I think if we're going to ask them to go back and market it for 4 months, it's hardly worth it. I think maybe we should say something specific about the deferral, a little bit more than that. So we're clear on what we're asking. It's not a typical deferral, this. It normally comes back to another meeting.
All right, Councillor Wall.
Yeah, just on Councillor Martin's point there, I mean, the officer did say that he accepted, or the council accepts the reports at face value, unless there's evidence to contradict the marketing report. So perhaps the community knows that there might be evidence to contradict the marketing report, and if we deferred it to give them a chance to produce that evidence, could we do that?
What I would would say is, I mean, it's not really up to us. It's up to us to defer it, and then it's for officers to work through. But what I would say to committee, look, it is quite a controversial application. Sorry. Yes, I know, but I'm trying to answer the thing about how long we defer for, because that was asked. It's been, I think, more than 20 months since the report was written, about 2 months ago. So, has it? Okay, this is where we could have done with the being able to ask a question of the the applicant as to how long is it still being marketed? Could somebody just say yes or no?
No, it's not marketing since.
Yeah, so they're saying yes, it's still being marketed.
No, it's not.
They're marketing a lease, and the brewers do not want a lease, they want to buy the free.
Ma'am, I'm just trying to find out. So my understanding is it's still being marketed. So we could defer, and within another month it would be 24 months. So our committee saying that if they've actually marketed for a full 24 months, it could come back? Or do you want another 2 years?
Yes, another 2 years.
Well, you want another 2 years marketing on top?
We don't give out, nobody give out any marketing. It's legal. We don't make any laws. We put the illicit and you.
Sorry, as the proposer, I deliberately didn't put timing on it because this is the kind of debate we're going to get into. I would say that at least, what I'd said was at least 24 months, and to pass some of the stringent tests. That's what I said, and Councillor Walls put one of the tests out there, which is what the officer said. There hasn't been a contradiction to it, so I would leave it, well, at least 2 months, but could be more. But it's with the officers to deal with it, rather than us to start setting 2 months, 1 month, 5 months. If I could, I would. Oh, for God's sake. Is there a plug?
Okay, so we have a proposal for deferral, so I'm going to move to a vote, because that's what we should do when there's a proposal. Yes, you can. Against, well, we've got to go to the vote, because we've had a mover and a seconder. Well, he can.
You're voting on the proposal to defer this application. If that vote falls, then there will be a further vote on the substantive application.
Yeah, no, I think he can. Sorry, the chair. You are able to speak against moving to deferral.
I've been trying to get it to go on. If you defer it and it comes back to this committee, then they'll have, if it isn't successfully marketed, then they will have met that test, and therefore you'll go ahead with approval. I would suggest that we do better to reject it on the grounds that I've already proposed.
Correct. Okay, so we're moving to the vote for deferral now. We've heard the reason why Councillor Young is against that, but we will move to a... So can I see all those in favour of a deferral, please show. So, and all those against? It's a deferral. Yeah. So we have 3. So this item is deferred for a further meeting. Thank you very much. We'll move on to the next one, which is item 1.